we can begin to discuss, according to Scripture, how the wave sheaf and the barley harvest relates to us in our modern day and age as it did to Israel in the days of old. Many accounts of Scripture show us in this season to be a time of deliverance from a time of chaos. The exodus from Egypt was during the barley harvest. To further support the counting of weeks and not the days, we will look at Messiah's account of counting weeks after he was offered up as the wave sheaf.
Okay. John 20:17 reads, Yeshua said unto her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren, and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my El and to your El.
Okay, so here obviously Mary of Magdalene could not yet partake of Messiah. Okay? Now this is the same thing that was going on in the Tanakh, in the Old Testament. They couldn't eat of the new corn until they waved up the sheaf. Okay, so here it is. Messiah's telling her, don't touch me. You can't partake of me until this sheaf is being offered up. Okay? So, but now let us look at the counting of weeks.
John 20:19 reads, Then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews, came Yeshua and stood in their midst and said unto them, Peace be unto you.
Okay. So when Messiah rose, it was the morning of the 7th day, Saturday morning, as we know it. When he came to the 12, it was evening at the completion of the 7th day. This is when Messiah begins to count for the 12. At the evening of the Sabbath will bring us into the first day, or Sunday. Then he will return 8 days later, thus far returning at the completion of every week, just as Leviticus prescribes to count complete weeks.
Verse 26 of John 20 reads, And after 8 days, again his disciples were within, and Thomas was with them. Then came Yeshua, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst, and said, Peace be unto you.
Okay, so what's key here, it says after 8 days. Okay? In John 21, we will see that the 12 are all together again at night, which comes after the evening. So according to the two previous accounts of when all the 12 were together, and Messiah shows himself to them at the ending of the Sabbath, I will assume that in John 21 is the ending of a Sabbath as well. And Peter going fishing at night because the Sabbath was over, thus being the completion of another week, and Messiah comes again in the morning at the completion of another week. This is where I have received my understanding to count weeks and not days after the wave sheaf. Messiah is constantly coming to the 12 after the Sabbath. You see what I'm saying? He came to them, that's why it says 8 days later. Because from Monday to Saturday will be 7 days. But when Sunday comes in, that's 8 days later. So, and this is where I receive my understanding of of counting weeks and not days.
Okay, we're going to go to Exodus 9 and 31. And the flax and the barley was smitten, for the barley was in the ear, and the flax was bold.
Okay, so this barley here is a representation of Messiah. Okay, he is the flax and the barley that will be smitten because he was in his season, at his time. He was ready.
Isaiah 53:4 reads, Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of El, and afflicted. Zechariah 13:7 reads, Awake, O sword, against my shepherd, and again the man that is my fellow, said Yahweh of hosts, smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered, and I will turn my hand upon the little ones.
Okay, so when we look it up in the Strong's numbers, both of these smitten and smite are the same Strong's numbers and meanings.
Matthew 26:31. Then saith Yeshua unto them, All ye shall be offended because of me this night. For it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered abroad.
Okay, so we see here Messiah being the flax and the barley that was smitten because he was in his season. He was in his time. Okay, but us being the wheat, we're not yet fully mature. We're not ready for the harvest.
Matthew 26:18. And he said, Go into the city to such a man, and say unto them, or unto him, The master saith, My time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples.
Okay, so what's key here, he says, my time is at hand. He was ready. He was fully ripe. He was in his season. He's ready to go.
Exodus 9:32, But the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were not grown up. Matthew 13:29, But he said, Nay, lest while you gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. Matthew 13:30, Let both grow together until the harvest, and in the time of harvest I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to be burned, or to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn.
Okay, so here we see this is a perfect mirror image of what's going on in the Exodus account with the barley and the harvest. The barley being ready, the wheat not being ready. This is, and we see this in the Brit Hadashah in the New Testament. Okay, so not long after this account was Israel, the people delivered from the bondage of Egypt. As we go on through our journey of Scripture and its accounts of deliverance, we see other witness testimonies of deliverance from chaos during this particular harvest season. So we see after the barley is smitten, not long after will the lamb be sacrificed and the people delivered from Ramesses. Israel's state of bondage to Sukkot, their point of covering, because this is what Sukkot means. It means a covering. Okay? We also see Yehoshua coming out of the wilderness 40 years of the we also see Yehoshua coming out of his 40 years in the wilderness at this particular very season and time.
Okay, Joshua 5:10, And the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal, and kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month, at even in the plains of Jericho. Joshua 5:11 reads, And they did eat of the old corn of the land on the morrow after the Passover, unleavened cakes and parched corn in the selfsame day. Leviticus 23:10 reads, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When you come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest. Leviticus 23:14, And ye shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the self